let's move on to another concept that Piaget introduced, which is the concept of schemas. Schemas, according to Piaget, are mental frameworks for organizing our experiences. So here's a pretty rudimentary schema for office, and you can see the factors that go into an office, the things that you would normally associate with an office, like a chair, that there'd be chairs and a desk and books and papers and a calendar, right? Let's see. Let's go ahead and talk about assimilation. I'll come back to that picture. Assimilation is the mechanism that allows you to incorporate new experiences into your existing schema. So we've got our understanding of the things that go into an office, and when we assimilate something new like fax machine into an office, we say, well, that's just a piece of office equipment. We stuff it in here. We really don't change our understanding of our schema of office. We just have this additional thing that we just sort of tack on into our existing schema. It doesn't really impact our essential understanding of what an office is or what goes into an office. We just know that in some offices there might be a fax machine. It's something that goes along with it. So you just incorporate new information into the existing schema without altering your understanding. In accommodation, you realize I might have misrepresented what an office is previously by leaving out some details. I keep thinking there's something to be revealed there. Because one of the things I'm missing in my office schema is something that was introduced to offices after I probably developed my original schema for office. For you guys who are probably by and large younger than I am, you might notice a glaring omission from this schema of what's in an office. Where's the computer, right? For me, the things that are on this schema of office make pretty decent sense. Yes, in an office you would expect, well, first off, papers and books. That's probably overemphasizing my academic experience, right? Although I got to tell you what, I have hardly any papers in my academic office anymore. I do have books. I have books and I have journals still, and I've been laughed at for getting journals in paper form instead of just subscribing online. But sometimes you want to stick a sticky note on something and go back to it later. Anyway, I know you can sticky note online, I know. Anyway, these things that are in this schema for office are the things that make sense to a person who's probably older. To a younger person, how can you have an office without a computer, right? We need to adjust this office schema to represent more accurately the new world of offices, right? We might have, you'll also notice there's no phone in this schema of office. Certainly for a number of years there should have been a phone in an office. Maybe we could get away today saying, well, maybe our phone is no longer necessary and we do all emails, all texts, whatever, and we don't communicate via phone anymore. I never like to call anyone with a work-related issue. I would much rather email or text somebody. So maybe it's okay that the phone's missing, but there's got to be a computer in here, right? We need to accommodate this schema to account for the new way that the world works. Our goal, according to Piaget, is to have a balance between our mental framework of the world and then how the world really is. So that we use assimilation as much as we can to sort of just stick new information into our schemas without having to think too hard. But occasionally we have to go through the struggle that is changing our understanding of the world so that we can accommodate new information. When I was a little girl, my neighbor got a microwave oven for their kitchen. Yes, I'm old. I mean, this was like 1978, something like that. And she got a microwave. And I'd never seen a microwave in somebody's kitchen before. Lo and behold, I just recently was watching some kind of like Modern Marvels or something and found out that the microwave was invented for train travel in like the 1930s. I had no idea. Anyway, so she has one in her kitchen. And she goes, hey, do you want a burrito? Because isn't that the only thing we can ever cook in a microwave, right, is a burrito. So she pulls out a frozen burrito, which first off, I did not know there was such a thing as a frozen burrito that could be bought at the grocery store either, because my parents didn't buy stuff like that. We were a little granola at my house, let's just put it that way. So she pulls out a frozen burrito, puts it on a paper plate, and sticks it in this thing that she's calling a microwave oven. And I said, well, isn't that going to burn up the plate? And she says, no, the plate won't get hot. And I said, well, how's the burrito going to get hot? And she goes, oh, it heats the burrito, but not the plate. And of course, she's 12, so I mean, let's cut her some slack. But I'm thinking, what are you talking about? And I tried to assimilate a microwave oven into my understanding of things that can cook food, but how do you? It heats up the food, but not the thing that's holding the food. I was having a great deal of difficulty understanding what I was being presented with. Over time, I ultimately had to accommodate this new thing that obviously was starting to pop up in everybody's kitchens. We got one a couple of years later at my house. And what is this? Well, it's a thing that cooks food without making the container hot. Okay, this is how I accommodated it. It's another way of cooking food. I got confronted with the issue again a few years later, probably 20 years later, when I saw my first ever I don't even know what it's called. Those ones that use the light bulbs that will actually, it's kind of like a microwave, but actually will brown the outside of meat and cooks it really super fast. I don't even really know what the name of it is. I looked at getting one when I remodeled my kitchen, and it was cost prohibitive, so I've repressed whatever it's really called. But you know, I've assimilated. You can tell. Did you hear my description of it? You can tell I've assimilated that. Uses a light bulb. It's kind of like a microwave because it does it really fast, but it browns, right? That's what we do when we assimilate information. We focus in on the things that are similar to things we already know, with its one little exception. So when a child's first learning the names of animals, they learn maybe the first four-legged animal that they learn the name of is their family dog, and they learn that its name is, Fido. So for a while, all four-legged animals are called Fido until mom and dad finally start convincing the child that, okay, some four-legged animals are dogs. Some are bigger, some are smaller. The smaller ones, maybe they meow and they're called cats. The bigger ones, maybe they say moo and they're cows, whatever, right? You have like these ways to sort of assimilate. Okay, yes, they're all four-legged. This one's smaller. It lives in the house. It says meow. That's our cat. That's a cat, right? You kind of help your child to ultimately understand the differences among all these different animals. Piaget says that it takes 20 different exposures to a new thing for you to ultimately accommodate that information into your schema rather than just trying to assimilate it. I kind of tested that hypothesis when my son was really little because he got stung by a hornet when he was about 2 years old. Down at the beach, and then he got stung again in his own sandbox at home about, I don't know, 6 months later. So his little brain was like, okay, flying things sting me, right? So we had to spend the next, at least 6 months, maybe even more, trying to help him to distinguish the difference among flying insects, right? He had basically assimilated all flying insects together, and they all sting. So he would equally freak out over a butterfly as a hornet or a wasp or a bee. He didn't distinguish. It took so many presentations of non-stinging flying insects for him to realize that not everything stings. During that period, all we needed was for him to get stung again, and we would have been back at ground zero for him to accommodate that information. But luckily, he did not get stung again. So he was ultimately able to accommodate his schema for flying insects into sting, no sting, right? That was torture, but ultimately he got it. And that's the thing that Piaget says we do our whole lives, and that the older we are and the more convinced we are that our schema is correct, the harder it is to get us to accommodate new information. And that's part of why stereotypes and prejudices are so firmly embedded, because you would need, let's say that you were raised with a particular stereotype. This is something I do in my in-person classes, is I have students generate like stereotypes that they've heard about Californians, and we write them all over the board. And they come up with things like materialistic, laid back, surfers, pot smoking. You know, they just generate a big list of things that go along with Californian. Superficial, did I mention that one? Bad drivers, things like that. And part of the reason why I can generate the list is because I'm actually from California and born and raised there. And so sometimes when the students can't think of anything, I kind of kickstart them with some stuff I've heard, because as a Californian, of course, I was sensitive to it. If you have a stereotype against a group, let's say Californians, and then you find out that someone you know and like or respect is a Californian, that causes a little disequilibrium. You understand the world in a certain way, and then you have been confronted with information that is contradictory to that information, into that schema. So now you have to account for it. One thing that you can do to assimilate the information, like when my students find out that I'm from California, and presumably they liked me beforehand or thought I was a good teacher beforehand, is they can assimilate the information by saying, see, I knew there was something off about her. I knew there was something odd. I didn't know what it was. This explains it. It's because she's a Californian. Another way to assimilate it would be to say, well, my teacher's a special case. Other Californians are still all the things that I listed, but my teacher's a special case. The one that I've encountered is different from everybody else. And when you do that kind of assimilation, it allows you to sort of maintain your existing schema, knowing that there might be exceptions to the rule. It would take 20 different Californians flying in the face of all the stereotypes for a person to finally come to the conclusion, maybe my stereotype is incorrect, and then accommodate that information, actually change their schema. That's why, you know, stereotypes are so hard to change. Prejudices are so hard to change, because it's really easy to find instances that support what you believe and really hard to notice all the instances that refute what you believe. We'll talk about this more when we get to another chapter. Okay, I'm going to wrap up to this segment by talking about Kohlberg's moral ladder, because it's really our last sort of cognitive model. Kohlberg was a student of Piaget, and Kohlberg was really interested in how we develop our ability to decide right from wrong as we mature. He believed that it's like we start at the bottom of the ladder and we climb our way up. And when we're little, we are preconventional. Preconventional means that we're trying to avoid punishment or gain reward. So unfortunately, this little boy's thought bubble is incorrect, because see where it says, I better share this toy or mommy will be mad? Mad isn't really that punishing. What the little boy would be more likely to worry about is that mommy will take it away from me to punish me, or mommy will be happy that I'm sharing and will reward me in some way. Preconventional children are worried about the reward that they're going to get or the punishment that they might avoid. Now, the next stage is the conventional level of morality, and this is where we get really focused in on following the rules and the laws that have been laid out as part of the society, right? Where we're like, well, I have to, it's the law. I have to, it's the rule. I mentioned my Girl Scout troop in my previous lecture. My Girl Scouts, I started leading a troop when we were like, the girls were first grade was the youngest, and then by the time we were done, the oldest girls were, I think, 8th grade. So I had them for a little period of time, right? And the thing is, we got to a certain phase where the kids were about between 7 and 11, and they got very conventional level. They wanted to, in fact, write out the troop rules, like not just the Girl Scout law and stuff like that, but they wanted to make up rules for the troop, write them on a you know, like poster board, and then every week when we had our meetings, we would put up the poster board so everybody knew what the rules were and everybody had to conform. And if you did something that was different from the rules, the other girls would call you out and say, that's against the rules. We said we weren't going to do that, or you can't do that, or whatever. During that conventional period, you follow the rules because it's the rule. You have to. You have to do it. It's the rule. Once you advance up to the post-conventional level, you're not just doing what the conventions tell you to do, what the laws tell you to do. Now you're starting to realize that people have rights, and that we need to do the right thing. That, you know, we start to develop our own ethical principles during this post-conventional stage. Now, not all of us move through all of these stages, and I mean, some people are stuck at pre-conventional and they'll like commit crimes and stuff and justify it, saying, well, I didn't think I'd get caught. Like, that's a justification for doing something wrong, right? there are people who never move past pre-conventional. There are people who never reach post-conventional. In fact, the way that Kohlberg would pose the problem, let me give you an example. He would give a moral a question, like, if you've seen Les Miserables, you'll recognize one of his ethical setups. And I'll just give you the shortened version. Basically, Jean Valjean broke into a store and stole medicine and food for his family. His wife was sick, and he got caught and got sent to prison for his theft, and was supposed to spend years there. But he broke out of prison, escaped to another part of the country, and set up a factory where he paid great wages and really took care of the people who lived around the factory and worked for it. One day when he was in town, the tailor recognized him as the escaped convict from the other part of the country, and now the tailor is confronted with an ethical question, a moral question. Should he turn in the escaped criminal so that he should have to face punishment, or should he not turn him in because look at the good he's doing with the factory and the wages and all that? So it's the tailor who faces a moral dilemma. People who are pre-conventional will focus in on, well, is there a reward for turning in a criminal? Like, will the tailor get some kind of benefit? Or is there a punishment? Like, will other people shun him because he's the one who caused their boss or their factory owner to get sent to jail? People who are more conventional level will say things like, well, it's against the law not to turn in an escaped convict. He has to do it. Or, since his escape, Jean Valjean has been following all the rules and laws, so there's really no reason to turn him in. So we're still within that conventional level morality where we're saying, well, are you breaking a law or are you supporting the laws? The post-conventional level, could go either way also. You've got post-conventional might say, well, he's doing more good than he ever did bad, and so we shouldn't turn him in because it would undermine his ability to continue doing good. Post-conventional could also come to the conclusion that you have to let the system do its job, and so you have to turn him in. And if it's true that he's more than paid back his debt to society, then he won't be sent back to jail. So you'll notice that at all three levels, it could go two ways, right? It's really the eye of the beholder. For Kohlberg, one way to tell if you're at the conventional level morality is if you refer to what someone else would do or what somebody else would think. Unfortunately for women, a lot of the times when we give our examples, we'll say things like, this sounds a lot like something that happened to my friend. And as soon as you say friend, Kohlberg concludes that you're worried about social issues, and he'll put you in the conventional level of morality. So unfortunately, Kohlberg's model tends to place women at the conventional level more often than men. Men are more likely to display post-conventional because they do this sort of like independent thinking and make their decision without referring to anybody else's perspective, stuff like that. So Kohlberg's theory has been criticized for being a little sexist in that regard. But otherwise, it's kind of an interesting model. And the other thing I'd like to point out about his ladder is that you don't always just climb straight up. I mean, all of us can regress a little. Like, if you think about the morality surrounding whether you ever speed or not, you might be able to make a pre-conventional reason for not speeding, like, well, I don't want to have to pay a fine in the form of a ticket or higher insurance rates because I got a ticket. I don't want to get punished like that. Or if I can go a certain amount of time without a ticket, then my old points will get wiped off my my record, something like that. That's very pre-conventional. You might be conventional level, and like my grandfather, he would set his cruise control at 1 mile per hour under the posted speed limit in case his cruise control was not accurate, and he would putt along on Southern California freeways doing 54 miles per hour while everybody else is doing 70 around us. But he's like, it's the law. I have to do it. On the flip side, conventional level morality, as everybody else is doing 70, you kind of, for most people, you kind of feel like you got to go along with them so that the rest of the people around you won't think you're a little old lady doing 54 miles per hour in the slow lane, right? So if you're worried about what everybody else is going to think about you, that's part of conventional level morality, whether people will judge you to be a chicken or whatever. With post-conventional morality, you're supposed to be more concerned about what is the right thing to do. So there's, on the one hand, we've all agreed that there will be posted speed limits, and we have all agreed to follow them, and therefore we should follow them. Not because it's the law and I don't care about it, but because we agreed. This is a society, and we agreed to follow the rules. On the other hand, you could post-conventionally say, you know, these rules are, these speed limits are set based on, you know, typical conditions for the road. Here in Western Washington, where I live, you know, a lot of times the typical conditions involve rain and stuff like that. So if it's a beautiful sunny day and the traffic is light, you know, maybe the speed limit should be considered faster. And so I'm just going to follow my personal ethics that it's safe, and I'm going to go the speed that I want to go. So you can kind of make an argument for different interpretations. It's not always that you're doing, you know, following the rules or not. It's all in the eye of the beholder. Okay. Let's go ahead and stop there, and we'll come back in the next segment and talk about intelligence.